Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I'm just sitting here drinking my morning coffee. Starting my day off. And for those of you who like these type of videos, please remember to click like down below. It would be greatly appreciated, help offset those dislike bots. But, over to the point. Last night I had somebody link me a video, actually numerous people linked me a video by Jeff Nippard saying, Jason, Jeff has finally admitted that the above the knee rack pull is one of the worst exercises ever that you shouldn't be doing. Now, I might not have normally covered this because I've gotten to a point where I don't care so much anymore. But here's the thing. No matter what beefs Jeff or I have had in the past, when you've called someone out on something, which I have on the rack pull for him, and they step up and say, you know what? This probably isn't a good exercise. I shouldn't have even done it, shouldn't have even promoted it. It's a bad exercise. And they basically admit they were wrong publicly. That's commendable. That should be respected. So when somebody does something like that, you have to give credit to them for that. You have to, guys. When someone publicly admits they were wrong. Doesn't even have to be an apology. Not even about apology. Just saying, hey, I stand corrected. I was incorrect. All right, that's commendable and that's intellectual honesty. So I'm going to give Jeff credit for that. Actually, he earned a little bit of respect from me on that one. And I think that's reasonable. And I think most people should be able to look at that and say, you know what? Okay, that's respectable. So what is it that he said about the above the knee rack pull? Now, he said, I don't really hate this exercise, whereas I hate this exercise. My bars cost me a lot of money. I got over $1,000 in bars. I see somebody do an above the knee rack pull, I cringe because I just visualize bars being destroyed. I look at gym owners and just go, man, I feel bad for you guys. In fact, I have seen a bar at a gym that has been ruined. It was an injury potential for someone. Someone had cracked it. Actually, it split the metal a little bit doing these heavy above the knee rack pulls because they had seen it on YouTube. And I went and took it to gym management and said, hey, this bar needs to be pulled out of commission before somebody gets hurt. All right, it's actually a serious deal. Like this goofy exercise, if we're going to talk about it, and he said that that's one of the biggest problems, that if you're not buying your own bars, you're kind of a douchebag if you do it. Okay, more or less, you are. And it's because you're damaging equipment. And it's not just about breaking other people's equipment, it's about the fact that you damage bars in such a way that other people get hurt. Now, most people say, well, shouldn't you inspect a bar? Any good lifter, before they do a heavy bench or a squat or anything else, will inspect the bar first, right? That should be common sense. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that you inspect the bar at a commercial gym before you put any heavy weight on it. Common sense. Except it's not that common. I'd be willing to bet that 95% of gym goers don't know that. I bet you 95% of gym goers, especially noobs who are most of the people out there, most of the people watching YouTube, don't have a clue that you should inspect a bar before you start doing any heavy work on it. They don't know that. They don't think about that. They're noobs. Bent bars, cracked bars, they get people hurt. Okay? They get people hurt. This is the sort of nonsense that gets people injured in the gym. Ruining these bars, bending them. So he made that point, but then what else did he talk about? The fact that it's not really useful. It's inefficient. Okay? It's inefficient. Well, what did he mean? Well, people who've been doing it always say, well, it's not about the carryover, it's about the traps. Like, if you think this is a trap exercise, you're probably kind of an idiot. But, over to the point. He basically said, look, it doesn't have carryover to the deadlift. So if you're doing it for deadlift carryover, waste of time. If you want deadlift carryover with a partial, you need to be doing them below the knee. In fact, we do block pulls. Like, you guys have seen me do block pulls lately. But when we say a block pull, what do we mean? 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch? In some cases, maybe a 4 inch. I think for most guys, 4 is stretching it. Really tall guy, maybe a 5 inch block pull on a conventional only. Right? That might be reasonable if you want to do below the knee block pulls. And we might do them for a conjugate lift, right? You might be doing them because you have a certain weak point where you stick just off the floor. All right? These are reasons which a person might do a block pull. The above the knee doesn't have carryover to the deadlift at all. It's not even a remotely similar exercise. You remove the hip hinge from it. Okay, he brought that up. The next thing he pointed out, if you need to build your traps, just do shrugs. Just do shrugs. Any sort of shrug. It's more effective. Because he basically said, well, it could replace it. But it doesn't just replace it. It's superior. Why? Because it's dynamic. You're actually taking the muscle. Like if people want to come in and say, hey, I'm doing this goofy exercise for one muscle. You only have one real muscle that you're worried about. Why wouldn't you pick a good exercise? Like, why would you take an exercise that has almost no dynamic movement at all? Like, well, why would you do that? That's ludicrous. All right, we're denying basic training specificity. We're denying how muscle fibers recruit. Shrug is vastly superior for the traps. Shrug is vastly superior for the traps. In fact, because of the nature of the movement, I've said before that a conventional deadlift or a deficit deadlift would probably build the traps more than an above the knee rack pull. It should be common sense when you look at it as to why that is. It has nothing to do with the weight pulling down. It doesn't matter that you can do 1,000 pounds above the knee. That's just stretch overload. You at least get the isometric at the bottom when you're bent all the way over. And you're not bending all the way over to do a rack pull. People aren't even doing a hip hinge. They're not even hinging it up. They're just squatting it up like a 4-inch squat. Okay? They're just doing a pin squat with it strapped up in their hands. And you kind of got to look at that and just go like, if you're going to be strapped in your hands, what's the point? You want to do a pin squat, do a pin squat with it sitting up on your back. I don't know. My traps, bros, my yoke. It doesn't work that well. It doesn't work that well. But he pointed out just doing a shrug, it would be more efficient. More efficient. But people have this weird idea, and this is where I'm going to blame Alex for this. And I think Alex, is largely pulled away from this. We don't see him doing rack pulls anymore. And here's what I would say with someone like Alex. Alex has come a long way in his training. You notice I don't insult him anymore. Here's what I would say to Alex. You might gain respect if you just came out later and said I was being a silly kid. I was younger. A few years ago. All right? Because we need to be willing to forgive if someone does something really goofy a few years ago. It reaches a threshold where when a certain number of years pass, it's just ridiculous to hold on to that. So you know what? I've matured. I realized it was goofy, and I don't do it to promote it anymore. I do this stuff instead. You know what? I think people would respect that. But Alex would try to pull this, well, the strongman thing, as if the farmer's walks are the reason strongmen have big traps, right? Like no reasonable person looks at everything that strongmen do and go, yeah, they got big traps from doing the farmer's walk. That's what did it. Is it a factor? Sure, it's one of the many, many, many dozens of things they do to grow their traps, ranging from pinning 55-gallon drums of anabolics, all the way up to tons of deadlifting, rowing, overhead pressing, cleaning. All that stuff kind of helps too. Okay, big factors. Sure, the farmer's walks contribute on the tail end as the smallest last 1%, but they didn't build their traps off farmer's walks because it's just a stretch. And we know stretch overloading doesn't produce maximum hypertrophy under normal circumstances. It just doesn't. Not saying it can't contribute. It's just not a very good primary stimulator of growth. At least in any human model, in any sort of ethical study that could be done. I'm not talking about animal models in which extremely unethical, mind-bogglingly painful studies are done, which it would be illegal to replicate on a human being. Completely illegal to replicate on a human being. Arguably, some people would argue it's unethical to have done it on the birds. Point could be made for that. You're never going to see those studies done in humans, and you would never willingly subject yourself to that level of torture. Okay? You wouldn't do that to yourself willingly. Like no person would sign a consent form for that when they realize what it involves. So, stretch overload under normal circumstances just doesn't work that well. Okay, you need to do dynamic movement. Then we come over to the whole stress versus fatigue. All right, stress versus fatigue. You have to be able to recover from the training. It has a very, very low training stimulus effect on what you're trying to do with a very high level of fatigue. That makes it just a bad exercise. And we've seen Dr. Mike break that down. In fact, he broke it down on that exercise specifically. So all of these factored in, while Jeff didn't come out and say he hated it. In fact, he said, I don't hate it. He still said, I have to put it in my list of exercises not to do. And I think it's good that he did that. And I think that we've got to get people away from that trend. And that's the thing that bothers me. It's like I want people to do big, heavy lifts. I want people to do big, heavy lifts. In fact, I've gotten to the point where I do more and more random type stuff on maxing out myself. And it's probably going to continue to get even more so. For big 1 rep max lifts, I get it. There's merit to rotating through and doing random stuff. There's actually legitimate merit to it from a programming perspective. But not 3-inch range of motion exercises with no carryover to anything that destroys bars. All right, just destroys equipment. And as even Jeff Cavalier pointed out, this exercise can actually cause nerve damage. You have an exercise that can damage your body, destroys equipment, has minimal training response, and just fatigues the hell out of you. At a certain point, people have got to look at that and go, okay, it's just silly. But I think we're at a point now to where it's died out. Almost nobody is promoting it. People are realizing it was a gimmicky, trendy thing that went through the whole community for a while, and hopefully it just dies out and stays in the exercise graveyard, and then we have to get rid of something else next. Squatting on a Bosu ball will come back in with one leg. A pistol squat on a Bosu ball will be the next thing that we'll have to debunk. And hopefully all of us can get on board and do that. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.